Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Eddie with Positively Atheist, and today's video is about whether or not Christian women can be leaders. Now, I don't mean can they actually be leaders. Of course they can be leaders. Of course, women are not only just as capable to be leaders as men, but in fact, women are oftentimes much better leaders, especially when it comes to governmental roles, businesses. They make great leaders, right? So this isn't whether or not women can actually be leaders. This is whether or not Christian women can be leaders. Here's the reason why I asked this, because I grew up in a very conservative religious background when I was a Christian. And the idea was, generally speaking, women were not supposed to be pastors in the churches that I was raised in. Now, there has been an uptick in churches allowing women ministers to step up into specific roles, different roles. Basically allowing this. But I have some serious qualms with this from a biblical perspective. I mean, first of all, a simple reading of the Bible makes it pretty clear whether or not women should or could be leaders, specifically in the church. The answer is no, not according to the Bible, not according to a plain, simple reading of the Bible. And where do I get that from? I get that from multiple places. First of all, just generally speaking, the Bible very specifically says that wives should not speak within a congregation, within a church. Now, the Bible defines church different ways, but let's go with the general broad use of the word church. Technically speaking, the church is defined as when two or more people are gathered in Jesus' name. Now, what's ironic about this definition is you could actually technically use this definition at any time. In fact, a lot of modern day Christians will actually point to this verse for their reason not going to church. They'll say, well, we are the church. When we're two or more believers together, we're technically the church. Okay, so they use that definition there. But a lot of Christians nowadays, and modern Christians, well, then when they are confronted with this biblical verse about whether or not women should be able to speak or have authority, they'll look at the words of Paul when he says that women should remain silent essentially in church, in the congregation. And they'll say, oh, well, he's only talking about when you officially meet together as a body. And the more liberal Christians will say, well, he's only speaking about that specific time in history. And I'm sorry, when you look at the Bible, just a plain, simple reading of the Bible, it's hard to walk away with anything other than slight disdain towards women in leadership. I'm sorry. I know that there are people who try to squint their eye and twist their head and try to turn the Bible this way and try to read into it with a more modern perspective in hopes that they can somehow square it away with our current modern philosophies and modern morality about the equality of women. But this is clear picking and choosing. A plain, simple reading of the Bible, at the very least, shows disdain for women in positions of authority in the church. So, thankfully, there are religions that are allowing women to step up in the places of leadership and authority, which they should. But they do so without the express consent of the Bible, without the express consent of God. Let's just put it that way. But even so, even if we look past that, when we say, okay, look, women should be allowed to teach and be leaders in the church from a biblical perspective, we have another problem when it comes to whether or not women should be allowed to be in leadership in general, when it comes to the biblical perspective. Now, I'm an atheist here. I not only do I not care whether or not women are leaders. I actually think women should be leaders in a lot of cases. And I think they oftentimes expect better leaders. But once again, we're looking at this from a Christian's perspective, because it boggles my mind how Christians justify these different positions. Christians are having to work so hard to justify their morality against what are the modern morality versus what the Bible says. I don't know how they sleep at night. The cognitive dissonance they must experience, to me, must drive them insane. They have this Bible that they're holding up as God's holy word, as the instructions for their life and how they should live their lives, but it doesn't square with our morality today and what we know about the world today. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying before I went down that little rabbit trail. Can Christian women be leaders in general? We've already discussed the church situation, and we've discussed the little nuances with that. But I'm asking the question in this video, can women be leaders in general? And I want to argue from a biblical perspective, they can't. That women, according to the Bible, technically cannot be leaders on any level. And here's the reason why I say that. It's because even if we set aside all the verses about women speaking in the church and women serving in ministry and the Bible's late guidelines for authority within the church, which is clearly set up for the misogynistic structure where men are to be in charge. When you look at other scriptures that talk about women's roles in society, it starts with their role in the family unit, and in their communities. And what does the Bible have to say then about women and their positions in the family and in society? Well, once again, the Bible's very clear. According to the Bible, women are to submit either to their parents, their father, or their parents, or submit to their husband. Right? There is no instruction any other way. Now, here's the reason why, this is the reason why I say I don't believe a Christian woman can be in a place of authority or leadership. And the reason why I bring this up is because we have politicians who are women who are stepping into positions of authority and leadership within political organizations, specifically conservative ones, supposedly right-leaning, godly Christian political organizations like the GOP, working for Donald Trump, and he had women working for him. But the thing is can they ever be true leaders? I would argue no, not according to the Bible. And the reason why is because according to the Bible, a woman must submit to her husband. This is facts. If a woman is married, she must submit to her husband. Now, you're going to ask, well, what does that have to do with whether or not she can be in a place of authority in a government role, for instance, or a business? Well, it's quite simple. Let's say a woman runs for a political office, for a Republican Congress seat, and she's successful, she wins. She gets into office, and she's doing her thing. What happens if her husband tells her he doesn't agree with one of her with something she's doing or saying? Maybe he wants her to vote a certain way that she doesn't want to vote, or her constituents don't want her to vote. What is she supposed to do? Well, as a godly wife, according to the Bible, she is to submit to her husband. This is what a plain, simple reading of the Bible, what it says. And because of that fact, a true Christian woman who is trying to live her life in accordance with the biblical worldview should not and cannot be an actual leader. Not even in secular businesses, organizations, or government positions. In fact, I mean, so really, what can a woman do? I mean, yeah, she could serve in a political position as long as her husband allows her to do it, and as long as she submits to his leadership. So and give you an example. Let's say there's a vote coming up on a particular issue, and the husband, who is in charge of the family, who is in charge of his wife, wants her to vote a certain way against her constituents. What's she going to do? Is she going to rebel against her husband? That's her only choice. She either has to submit to her husband and what he wants and desires, or not. But even if we take out the whole thing about the voting thing, because you might say, well, you know, the submission thing is not about controlling every decision she makes, right? Maybe you can justify that. So once again, Christians are having to squint their eyes and twist their head and turn the Bible sideways, all kinds of different, contort it all different ways, just to try to make sense of it with our modern philosophy and our modern ideologies. But let's take that part out. Here's a real crazy thing. You should never vote for a woman who is married and a Christian, because guess what? What if her husband decides that he wants to move the family out of the state? Just like this. Hey, honey, we're moving out of the state now. Now, you just voted for this woman you were hoping, you put your hard-earned vote on this woman, and at any time her husband can just say, hey, I want you to quit. Or, hey, we're moving out of the state. Hey, I want you to be a stay-at-home mom, no more working for you. Once again, a godly Christian, God-fearing woman, her responsibility is to what? Submit to her husband. So I wanted to point this out because I feel like there's so much major hypocrisy in this. You have these women who are running for political office, taking positions of authority, but they're also pushing ideologies that suppress other women. See, these women aren't letting that affect them, right? They're happy to talk out of both sides of their mouth. Oh yeah, we need to have godly Christian principles in our government. We need to get back to the Bible. We need to have prayer. We need to have God be the center of our government. The 10 Commandments in the Bible and Judeo-Christian. We need Judeo-Christian values, right? But that doesn't apply to them, because if it did, they wouldn't be running for office. If it did apply to them, they wouldn't be trying to go into places of authority and leadership. The only real place for a godly Christian woman, if you really think about it, is at home, washing dishes, doing laundry. If you really think about it, when you read the Bible and how the Bible presents the relationship between a man and a woman, that's really the only thing a woman is good for when it comes to now remember, I'm not saying this for myself. I'm an atheist. I believe everyone's equal. We need to have equal rights. I think all this is hogwash, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of a biblical worldview. If you want to hold a biblical worldview, if you want to fight for Judeo-Christian values in our government, and you're pushing it on it, then you should be living that out. But these women aren't doing that, are they? They want their cake and eat it too. They want to have these positions of authority, but they want to support ideologies that suppress the very things that they rely on for those positions of authority. So what it really means is, it's whatever is good for the goose is not good for the gander. What they really want to do is suppress other women's abilities. See, them pushing their ideologies aren't really affecting them, because they're still going to run for office, they're still going to get places of authority, and when you question about it, say, well, that's not how the Bible intends it, they'll squint their eye, they'll turn all kinds of different ways to try to justify what they're doing. But the ideologies they're pushing are harming other women who are coming behind them. Think about this. If you're pushing Judeo-Christian values, biblical godly values, I just went over what those values are. There's no way to look at the Bible and read the biblical text regarding women and leadership and walk away with anything other than what I just laid out. But yet, Christian women are pushing these very ideologies, using their actual platform of authority and leadership to push these ideologies onto society and suppress the people who they suppress women, so other women who won't be able to do what they did because of the actual ideologies they're pushing. I think this is just an interesting topic. I want to hear your thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on a godly, biblical Christian woman being in a place of authority and leadership? I don't think it's possible. I don't think they can do. I think they can. I don't think it's possible to do both. And this is why secular morality is far more superior than religious morality, because secular morality, it allows for us to be consistent in our values and our actions. And I want to argue for that, throw it out there. I want to get some comments on the comment section below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on godly, quote unquote, godly Christian women and the biblical worldview regarding their positions of leadership over men? Because I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible for them to do both unless they are being hypocritical and not being consistent in their values. So I'd love to hear your feedback. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this content and you want to hear more of it, just let me know. Thanks.